Did those of you in the center start thinking, why did I pick today to sit in the middle of this aisle? There are the exits, but wait a minute, I think I can beat this guy. She doesn't look too fast, I could get out of there. Or, with a complete accuracy and immediacy, did you start tweeting out that I'm about to burn down the sub because there's a librarian? Can even librarians even do that on Twitter? Or, did you raise up out of your seat a little, gripping the arm rails, thinking, oh my gosh, what is she doing? I've got to stop her now. That could be a seminal piece for my research. Or a great piece of literature that hundreds of people must read because it's been read for thousands of years. When we see students and researchers come into the academic library here at the university, we see them come in, they sit down at a computer if they haven't brought a laptop with them, and they start researching. They have access to over 400 databases, over 30,000 journals. They have access to over 200,000 ebooks. But we always hear, why don't you have more on my subject? Then we see them go into the stacks and they pull all these books off and they gather them up in their arms and they take them to the nearest table with these eyes looking at them from their colleagues and students saying, what are you doing? And they drop them down, knowing that they're writing the best next piece of research that their faculty member is going to hold up as the best thing ever written by a student. Public libraries are important as well. And when I talked to a friend, he told me a story. He said, you know, when I take my children to the library, I can release them into the children's section and tell them to look and discover and bring me back a book. And then we talk about, why did you choose that book? But he said, I can't do that on Amazon or online. It's that sense of discovery. It's that adventure. It's seeking out that one book or resource that makes a difference to you. Last year, a couple of years ago, those of you who have been in Lubbock may remember that the City Council started talking about the GoTo branch of the library. Was it even needed? I am the chair of the Lubbock Library's board, so I was able to look at both sides of this issue. So what I did was, among others, we talked to City Council about the importance of the library and what it meant to Lubbock. It's the only library south of 19th Street, so it serves a huge population. We were joined by Texas Tech, Dr. Ben Shacklett's graduate design class in architecture, who took this on as their class project. How would they design a library for the future? What would it need? What would it entail? And they interviewed us and read and used all the resources they could to develop the future library for Lubbock. They also looked at city property and where they could go and talk to city staff about what land was possible to do that. The other thing the library board did was we held town council meetings so that we could hear from the citizens. Does this matter? Does this library mean anything to you? And they showed up and they told their stories of how international students or their families would come to the public library to learn English. And we heard how people went to there to learn different stories of culture and how to best fit in and teach their children the same things. This is a picture of the old GoTo Library, and this is where we held the town meetings. Now, most recently, it did open up, and we do have the library. What made the difference? Was it me, a librarian, pulling the ranks together, pushing the agenda forward, going to city council, spouting all this stuff? No, it was the users. It was the people using the library who made the difference. Now, librarians do a lot of stuff, and one of the things we do is we collect statistics on everything. Everything. You ask us about something, we know it. So we collect user statistics, such as how many people are logging in using our internet access. We look at specific database and electronic product usage information. We look at what's being used and we look at how often it's being used and what are the peak times that it's being used. And this helps tell our story to administrators when we go to them, talk to them about the value of the library. Now you may be thinking, oh yes, the library is important, everybody knows that. But when it comes to decision making on funding and budgets, this is the information that's going to be most critical. Now I want to tell you a couple of stories that I told the City Council as a user. Not a librarian because, well, I'm a librarian, I'm supposed to like libraries. But I tell them the story of when I was growing up, and the first thing we would do when we went to a new community is we would go to the public library. And I can remember that first time I was able to have my own library card. It was so exciting. Because before that, I had to take them to my mother, and she would check them out for me and my brother, and everything was wonderful. And then I also remember the librarian telling me that I could only check out books in this area of the library. Anything else, I had to get my mother's permission. But the power I felt being able to go in, select what I wanted, and then read it and borrow it, and I felt responsible because I had to bring those books back the next week to check out books as well. Now let's fast forward this a lot of years in the electronic environment, and I'm a librarian, but I have a Kindle. That's kind of a little confession there. I will read electronic books. I do like them. Was going with a colleague back from a conference. It was in Indianapolis. And we were flying over Kansas to go to Las Vegas to come to Lubbock, and anybody that's had to travel to Lubbock from somewhere else, you know you have 15 stops. So I finished the book that I was reading. And the book, the plane, happened to have Wi-Fi. So I was able to go into the Lubbock Public Library via the Wi-Fi, return the book I was reading, browse the catalog, see what other public books they have that I might want to read, download it, and begin reading it. Now that's a story of use, and I can tell that usage story and make a point about use. But you play a bigger role than I do, and these are your weapons, and that's your library card. Whether you're on an academic campus or whether you're in a community, that's your weapon, because we do look at usage. And when we go to ask for funding or request funding, we ask it and we have to base it on our usage statistics. The idea that everything is on the internet and it's free doesn't hold. So we have to make up and say, this is what we need. And we answer researchers and they say, why don't you have this journal? Because it is an important piece of my research. We look at interlibrary loan statistics and we say, well, yes, you borrowed this piece has been borrowed, and we'll put that in. So you are our biggest advocate. You are the ones who are going to help bring funding to the libraries and continue them on. Now, we can all agree that we like libraries, and this is a very sad sign, because we don't want to see empty shelves, whether they're physical or whether they're virtual, because funding does matter. So what you have to decide when you're looking at using resources is, are you going to be the flame that's below the book that may be keeping new materials from coming in, or are you going to rise that flame above the book, just as the flame in these balloons are giving lift to the people who are going to be going high above the earth and getting a new perspective and a new paradigm as with readers of books and users of libraries. Thank you.